In the vast expanse of the galaxy, the Zorth Empire loomed like a dark shadow casting its reach over hundreds of worlds. They were a race born from ruthless conquest. Their thirst for domination never satisfied. Their technology far surpassed anything humanity had ever dreamed of, and their armies were endless, brutal, and efficient. The Zorth believed that any species that could not match their might was destined for extinction. They had swept across the galaxy, crushing civilizations, leaving nothing but rubble in their wake. Humanity, once a proud and flourishing species, had been reduced to a scattered remnant, left to hide on the one world the Zorth deemed inconsequential Earth, the last refuge of humankind. A dying planet, far from the heart of the galaxy. Earth had been forgotten by most of the galaxy, or so the Zorth thought. They were content to leave it in its decayed state, as a relic of fallen empire. But the humans were not as broken as the Zorth had assumed. The fight for survival had forged them into something greater. They had endured the destruction of their colonies, the slaughter of their people, and the slow erasure of their legacy. But humanity was far from done. Earth may have been forgotten, but its people had not forgotten who they were. Captain Area Knight stood at the helm of the Resistance, a small but growing faction of humans determined to rise from the ashes of their fallen empire. The Zorth had underestimated humanity's spirit, and now it was time to show the galaxy just how dangerous the human race could be. She had witnessed the destruction firsthand, watched as cities were wiped from the map, as their people were hunted down and killed in cold blood. The pain of it all had shaped her into the leader she was today. She was no longer the scared child hiding in the ruins. She was a fighter, a survivor, and a symbol of hope for her people. The Resistance was a patchwork of survivors from every corner of Earth. They were engineers, farmers, soldiers, and scientists, all united under one banner, the fight for humanity's freedom. Their numbers were small, their resources limited, but their resolve was unbreakable. They knew the Zorth Empire was vast and powerful, but they also knew something that the Zorth had forgotten. Humanity had always been at its best when it was pushed to the brink, when there was no hope left, when survival itself was in question. Humanity fought with everything it had, and sometimes that was enough. Aria stood in the command center of their hidden base, a makeshift facility deep beneath the Earth's surface. Her mind was focused on the task ahead. They had learned of a potential weakness in the Zorth's seemingly invincible grip on the galaxy. A mysterious signal had emerged from the far reaches of space, its origin unknown, but its message clear. It was a beacon, a call for help, or perhaps something more, promise that there was more to humanity than the Zorth could imagine. Aria couldn't ignore it. They had to find the source of the signal and uncover its secrets. It was their only chance to reclaim the galaxy and show the Zorth that humanity would not be forgotten. The first step was to find the ship, the one that had sent the signal, and discover what it held within it, what power had been left behind by their ancestors, and what it could mean for the future of their people. She turned to her team gathered around her, their faces worn with the weight of endless battles, but their eyes burned with the same fire that had driven humanity to the stars centuries ago. This mission was their last hope, and they would fight with every ounce of strength they had left to see it through. The mission was dangerous. No one could deny that the Zorth were everywhere. Their fleets patrolled the galaxy with unyielding precision, hunting down any trace of rebellion. They were the galaxy's predators, and humanity had become nothing more than prey. But Aria had seen the spark in her people, their resilience, their unbreakable will to survive. She knew that if they were going to win this war, they had to do more than just fight. They had to outthink their enemies, outlast them, and find the strength to rise up when the galaxy believed they were already gone. The signal had come from an uncharted region of space, a place known to the galaxy as the Fringe. It was a desolate stretch of dead worlds and abandoned star systems. Most people avoided it as a place of no consequence, but Aria knew better. She had spent enough time studying the old records, the forgotten histories of humanity, to know that the Fringe once held secrets that no one in the galaxy could comprehend. It was there that humanity's ancestors had ventured out into the stars long before the Zorth had ever set foot in this part of the galaxy. It was a place of untold history and power, a place where humanity's true legacy had been forged. Aria and her team made their preparations in silence. There were no celebrations, no false promises, just the hard reality of what they were about to do. They would travel into the heart of enemy territory, with nothing but their wits and their courage. If they failed, the human race would be lost forever. But if they succeeded, they could change everything forever. They gathered on the underground launch pad, the air thick with anticipation. The ships were small, but fast enough to avoid detection and agile enough to navigate the dangerous space that lay ahead. The team was ready, each member knowing their role. Without hesitation, they boarded the ships one by one and took their positions as Arya stood at the front of the command ship. Her mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead, the weight of her people's hopes bearing down on her shoulders. Prepare for launch. Arya's voice was steady, even though her heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of history in the air, the lives of billions depending on their success. Stay sharp and keep your eyes on the scanners. We can't afford any mistakes. With a loud hum, the engines ignited, and the ship shot upward into the cold void of space. The resistance fighters were gone, and humanity's last hope was now in motion. As they moved deeper into the fringe, the stars seemed to grow dimmer, the blackness of space closing in around them, their ships slipping through the darkness like shadows, passing unnoticed. Arya kept her focus on the task at hand. Their mission was clear, but it wasn't easy. They had to find the source of the signal before the Zorath could intercept them. They had no backup, no reinforcements. If they were discovered, they would be alone. Hours turned into days as they navigated through treacherous asteroid fields and avoided the watchful eyes of Zorath patrols. The tension among the crew grew thicker with every passing moment, but Arya kept them steady with her unwavering determination. She knew they couldn't afford to falter, not now, not when the future of humanity was on the line. Then one day it happened. The scanners began to pick up something, a faint signal on the horizon, a pulse that matched the frequency of the signal they had been tracking for weeks. They were close, they had found it. But what lay ahead would change everything forever. The signal grew stronger as they moved closer, its rhythmic pulse vibrating through the hull of their ships. It was almost as if it was calling to them, guiding them towards something unknown. The tension in the air was palpable. Every crew member felt it, the unknown ahead, and the promise of what they might find, but also the lurking fear that it could all be a trap, a trick by the Zorath to lure them into a deadly ambush. Arya gripped the controls of her ship, her eyes scanning the readings as they neared the source of the signal. The dark expanse of the fringe began to reveal something they had not expected, a massive structure hidden among the stars, a colossal ruin floating in the emptiness of space. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its size alone was enough to take their breath away. It was a city, a ship, or something else entirely, something ancient and powerful. "Is that it?" one of the crew members asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It has to be," Arya replied, her voice calm. But her heart was racing. There was no mistaking it. The structure was human-made, or at least made by beings that once shared the same destiny, the same history as humanity. The closer they got, the more the ship's scanners revealed it was an ancient craft, a relic from a time long before the Zorath had even existed. The surface of the ship was covered in marking symbols that no one alive could understand. But there was no mistaking the presence of technology far beyond anything humanity had ever created. This was no ordinary ship. This was something much greater. It was a weapon. It was a fortress. It was the answer to everything they had been fighting for. The ships entered the massive docking bay of the ancient craft. The walls were covered in thick layers of dust and debris, signs of a long-abandoned ship. Yet despite the silence and decay, there was an undeniable sense of life here, a presence. Something waiting for them, something that had been dormant for centuries. Arya led the team into the heart of the structure, their boots echoing through the metal corridors. As they moved deeper into the ship, the air was cold and stale. But it didn't matter. Every step brought them closer to uncovering the truth of their past, the truth of humanity's lost legacy. As they ventured deeper into the ship, the crew found signs of an advanced civilization, its halls lined with technology that seemed to hum with power. Though it had not been used for millennia, Arya felt a strange pull toward the heart of the ship, like it was alive and calling to her. With every step she took, the air around her seemed to shift, as if the ship itself was awakening. They reached a large central chamber at the core of the ship. The walls here were lined with vast consoles and strange machines, all dark and dormant, yet still brimming with untapped energy. In the center of the room was a pedestal upon which rested an object wrapped in glowing energy. It was a small sphere pulsating with light, but there was no mistaking its importance. This was what they had come for, the heart of the ship, the key to everything. Arya stepped forward cautiously, her hands reaching out to touch the sphere. But before she could make contact, a low hum filled the room, and the ship seemed to come alive with energy. The walls lit up with streams of data. The air crackled with electricity as the ancient technology roared to life. A voice boomed from the walls, a voice not of flesh, but of metal and electricity, its tone deep and resonant. "Who dares awaken the star forged?" It asked, the words echoing in the chamber. Arya froze her hand just inches away from the pulsating sphere. The voice filled the room like a storm, crashing through the silence, its tone deep and resonant, as if the ship itself was alive and aware of their presence. The crew stiffened, their weapons drawn instinctively. They knew this was no ordinary discovery, no forgotten relic from the past. This was something far more significant, something that had been waiting for them. The voice spoke again, its words slow and deliberate. "You dare awaken the starfold, the children of the stars." Arya's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the words. She had never heard the term starfold before, but it sounded familiar, like something deep within humanity's past, something lost in the galaxy's history. "Who are you?" Arya's voice broke through the silence, the weight of the question hanging in the air. The walls seemed to pulse with energy as the voice responded. "We are the architects, the creators of worlds, the first of your kind, born in the heart of the stars. We have watched over you for eons, and now you have come to claim your birthright." Arya's heart pounded in her chest. She glanced at her team, each of them equally stunned by the revelations unfolding before them. The ship was not just a weapon, it was something far more powerful. It was tied to humanity's origins, a secret that had been hidden from the galaxy for millennia. "Why didn't we know this?" Arya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why was this hidden from us?" The voice seemed to acknowledge her question, the hum of the ship growing louder, as if it were considering the answer. "The galaxy was not ready to know your true history. The Zoroth sought to erase your legacy, to make you forget what you once were, but now the time has come to awaken you to your potential." A deep rumble shook the chamber, and the pedestal holding the sphere shifted slowly. It glowed brighter, as if reacting to the voice's words. The air around them crackled with energy. The ship was awakening fully now, its ancient systems stirring to life. "You are the Starborn, the first to walk among the stars, long before the rise of the Zoroth." The voice continued. "Your kind created the foundation upon which the galaxy was built. You were the architects of the civilizations that came after you, built them in your image. But something went wrong, and your legacy was buried, lost to the ages." Arya's mind spun with the implications of the words. The Starborn, humanity's lost ancestors, had once been the creators of entire galactic civilizations. The Zoroth had not merely defeated humanity, they had erased them from history, buried their achievements, and claimed the galaxy as their own. The ship hummed again, and the walls shifted, revealing vast arrays of star maps, ancient records of humanity's golden age. It was all coming together. The Zoroth had not simply conquered humanity, they had wiped them from the galaxy's memory. And now Arya was standing in the heart of that forgotten legacy, the Starforged ship, the heart of humanity's power. Arya stepped forward, her hands brushing the surface of the sphere, and in that moment she felt a surge of energy, unlike anything she had ever experienced. The ship seemed to recognize her, to acknowledge her as its heir. And as the power coursed through her veins, she realized the truth: humanity had never been weak, they had only been dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "Prepare yourselves," the voice boomed again. "The time of your rebirth has arrived." The ship's energy surged through Arya's body, her mind racing with the overwhelming flood of information and power. The sphere in her hands thrummed, as if it had recognized her connection to the long-lost legacy of humanity. The walls around her seemed to ripple with ancient knowledge systems, long dormant, began to awaken as the ship responded to her touch. The ship itself was a living entity tied to the very fabric of the galaxy, a testament to what humanity had once been capable of. Her team watched in awe as the power in the room intensified, the air crackling with energy. They could see the change in Aria, her eyes glowing with the ship's power, her form almost glowing with the radiant force now coursing through her veins. It was as if she had become one with the Starforged, a living embodiment of humanity's lost potential. Aria could feel the ship's thoughts in her mind, a slow and steady flow of knowledge, an ancient presence guiding her through the dark corridors of history. The ship spoke again, its voice softer this time, but still as resonant as before. You are the one who will awaken your people, bring them back to the stars, where they belong. You have the power to change the course of the galaxy. The words echoed in Aria's mind. As her thoughts became clearer, the path ahead was unfolding before her. The power of the Starforged had been passed down through generations, but it had been forgotten, buried beneath the weight of time and war. She had always believed humanity's greatest strength lay in their will to survive, their ability to adapt and overcome. But now she realized that the true strength of humanity was something far greater. It was the legacy they had left behind, the power they had once wielded, the civilizations they had built. The Zorith had never understood humanity's true nature. They had crushed their colonies and erased their history, but they had underestimated one thing: the will to reclaim their birthright. No matter the cost, humanity had always been capable of incredible feats when pushed to the brink. And now they were more than just survivors. They were the rightful heirs to the galaxy's forgotten legacy. Aria's voice cut through the hum of the ship. How do I harness this power? How can we use it to defeat the Zorith? The ship responded without hesitation. You must gather the pieces of the Starforged scattered across the galaxy. They are the key to unlocking your people's true potential. Each piece holds a fragment of the power you now possess, and together, they will give you the strength to stand against the Zorith. Aria's mind raced with the implications of the ship's words. The galaxy was vast, and the Zorith controlled much of it, but the Starforged were scattered across countless worlds, each piece hidden, waiting to be found. If humanity could retrieve them all, they could awaken their full potential and challenge the Zorith for control of the galaxy. Her resolve hardened. The Resistance had only just begun their journey, but now they had a purpose, a path to follow. Aria turned to her team, each of them now looking to her for guidance, their faces filled with determination and hope. This mission was no longer about survival. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. The fight for the future of humanity had begun in earnest. Prepare yourselves, Aria said, her voice strong and unwavering. We have a galaxy to take back, and we will not stop until humanity is free. With the ship's power at their backs and the knowledge of their lost legacy now within reach, Aria and her team set their sights on the galaxy beyond the stars. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while they had hope. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Aria's resolve burned brighter than ever. The Starforged ship had given them a glimpse of humanity's true power, but it was only the beginning. Now they had to find the pieces scattered across the galaxy, each piece a key to unlocking the full potential of humanity, and each piece hidden in the most dangerous corners of space. The Zorith had made sure of that. They were not about to let their ancient enemies rise again. As the ships lifted off from the ancient Starforged vessel, Aria's thoughts were already focused on the task ahead. He knew their enemies were watching, they always were, and the Zorith would not take kindly to the awakening of humanity's legacy. The first step was to gather intelligence, and that meant contacting the scattered resistance cells hidden throughout the galaxy. Aria's team was small, but with the power of the Starforged behind them, they could move quickly. They just needed to stay ahead of the Zorith. The first target was a distant world called Naxos, a planet in the Outer Rim, known for its harsh terrain and harsh inhabitants. It was a place where the Resistance had made contact with a key ally, a former military commander named Kale, who had been tracking the movements of the Zorith for years. If anyone knew how to find the pieces of the Starforged, it would be him. The team arrived on Naxos, under the cover of darkness, their ships slipping through the atmosphere, undetected, landing in a desolate desert valley, where Kale had set up a small base. The air was dry, and the ground cracked with age. The planet seemed to have been forgotten by time, but not by the humans who had made it their home. Aria and her team stepped off the ships and into the night, their boots crunching on the sand, As they made their way toward the base, Kale was waiting for them, standing at the entrance with his arms crossed and a look of guarded anticipation on his face. "You made it," he said, his voice rough with years of hard living. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "We came because we need your help," Arya replied, her voice calm but firm. "We need to find the pieces of the Starforge, and we can't do it alone." Kale studied her for a moment before nodding. "I've been tracking the Zoroth for years now. I know where they've hidden the pieces of your legacy. But it won't be easy. They've made sure the path is well guarded. Every piece is protected by a fortress. And if we try to take them head-on, we'll be walking into a slaughter." Arya nodded. She had expected this. The Zoroth had always been ruthless in their efforts to control the galaxy, but she knew they couldn't be allowed to hold the power of the Starforge any longer. "Then we'll have to be smarter than them. We don't need to fight them head-on. We need to outmaneuver them and take the pieces one by one." Kel's eyes gleamed with understanding. "You're right, we have the advantage in the shadows. We've always been able to move faster than they can react. We'll need to be strategic, but it can be done." Arya turned to her team. "We've faced worse odds before, and we've always found a way through. Now it's time to use everything we've learned to bring humanity back to the stars." With Kel's information in hand, the team set their sights on their first target, a hidden Zoroth fortress on the moon of a distant planet. Their plan was simple: strike fast and leave no trace. The Zoroth were not expecting them to be this bold, and they had no idea what they were up against. The ships prepared for launch again, this time with more purpose. The quiet hum of the engines filled the air. As Arya looked out across the barren desert valley, the night sky stretched endlessly above her, a canvas of stars and endless possibility. The galaxy had been forgotten, but now humanity was awake again, and they would never be erased again. The ships rode to life once more, the engines humming with anticipation. As Arya's team prepared for their mission, the stars stretched out before them, endless and cold. But within that darkness lay their opportunity. The Zoroth were relentless in their pursuit of domination, but they were not infallible. They had become overconfident, believing humanity had been crushed and erased from history. But they had underestimated the tenacity of the human spirit, and now the resistance was ready to strike. Kel's intelligence had given them a lead on the Zoroth fortress, on the moon of Nellis, a barren rock orbiting a gas giant. The Zoroth had made it their stronghold, guarding one of the Starforge pieces within its heart. The fortress was a fortress in every sense of the word, surrounded by thick walls of energy and heavily guarded by automated sentries. But Kale had a plan. They could infiltrate the outer layers without being detected if they moved quickly and carefully. The key was getting inside undetected and disabling the security systems from within. Arya sat at the helm of her ship, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. The rest of the team was already in position and ready to launch. The moon of Nellis grew larger on the view screen as they approached its cold surface, dotted with craters and deep ravines. Their objective was clear: retrieve the piece of the Starforged and escape before the Zoroth knew they had been there. "Prepare for insertion." Arya's voice was steady as she gave the command. The ships began their descent toward the moon, the cold atmosphere of Nellis pressing against the hull of their vessels. The moon's surface was desolate, nothing but barren plains and jagged rock formations, with the Zoroth fortress hidden beneath the surface. The ships landed in a small valley concealed from aerial view. The team disembarked quickly, their boots crunching on the dusty surface, the sound of their movements barely audible in the silence of space. Arya led the team forward, the night sky above them dotted with distant stars, the glow of their ship's engines casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. They made their way toward the entrance to the fortress, a hidden passageway that led deep underground. The fortress was built into the moon's crust, its massive steel doors heavily reinforced. But they knew where to find the weak points. Kale had scouted the location weeks in advance, and now it was time to put their plan into action. As they approached the fortress, the security systems came to life, the low hum of energy fields crackling in the air, automated sentries scanning the area for any signs of intruders. Arya raised a hand, signaling the team to stop and wait. They had to move carefully. One wrong move, and the Zoroth would be on them in seconds. Kale worked quickly, moving to a nearby panel concealed in the shadows, his fingers flying over the interface as he bypassed the security systems, one by one disabling the energy fields and allowing them access to the fortress interior. The seconds felt like hours, but Kale's focus never wavered. With a soft hiss, the massive steel doors slid open, revealing the dark interior of the fortress. Area's team moved inside, their footsteps echoing off the metal walls. The temperature dropped as they descended deeper into the structure, the air thick with the smell of machinery and old metal. They moved quickly, knowing time was against them. "Keep your eyes open," Area whispered, as they approached the central chamber where the Starforged piece was stored. The room was heavily guarded by more sentries, but they had a plan for that too. The team worked in sync, silently disabling the guards one by one until they reached the chamber door. Kale stepped forward, pulling out a small device that would disable the final layer of security. With a quick motion, he activated it, and the door slid open. Inside was the piece of the Starforged, a small orb glowing with an otherworldly energy, resting on a pedestal. Aria's breath caught in her throat as she looked at it. The power it held was unimaginable, and it was within their reach. Aria moved forward slowly, her hand trembling. As she reached for the orb, she could feel the power surging from it, like a beacon calling to her. She could feel the ship, the Starforged ship, deep within her mind, pulsing with the same energy. This was it, the first piece of humanity's lost legacy. As her fingers brushed against the surface of the orb, the ground beneath them shook, a deep rumble echoing through the fortress. The Zorath were on their way. The rumble shook the very core of the fortress, a deep vibration that seemed to reverberate through the walls. The sound of approaching Zorath soldiers echoed from the hallways outside. Aria's pulse quickened, her hand still resting on the glowing orb, the power inside it thrumming with energy. But now wasn't the time to admire it. They had to leave before the Zorath arrived and overwhelmed them. "Get the orb." Kale's voice was low but urgent as he turned to face the team, his eyes flicking to the doorway where the sound of footsteps grew louder. "We don't have much time." Aria carefully lifted the orb from its pedestal, the weight of it surprising despite its small size. She could feel the power coursing through it. As if it was alive, the energy seemed to respond to her touch, and for a moment she felt connected to something greater, a force long forgotten, but always present. "Let's move," she said, her voice steady. Even though her mind raced, they had what they came for now. They had to get out. The team quickly formed a line, their weapons drawn and ready to fight if necessary, but Aria knew that a fight would only slow them down. The Zorath were relentless. They were everywhere, but humanity had learned to survive by using their wits and speed, not brute force. They made their way back through the corridors, the walls now shaking as the Zorath's presence grew closer. Their steps were swift and silent, moving through the shadows to avoid detection. Aria's mind was focused on the mission, the orb pulsing in her hand, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Kale led the way back to the entrance they had come through, but as they reached the final hallway, the sound of footsteps grew deafening, and a harsh voice echoed from the darkness. "Intruders identified. All units prepare for engagement." Aria cursed under her breath. They had been found. The Zorath were already mobilizing, and they were no longer the only ones in the fortress. "Get to the ship," she ordered without hesitation. "Move quickly, don't stop for anything." The team sprinted toward the exit, their feet pounding against the metal floor, the sound of the Zorath soldiers closing in behind them. Aria could hear their voices shouting commands, the metallic screech of weapons being drawn. Their pursuit was relentless, but they couldn't afford to stop now. As they neared the exit, Aria turned to look over her shoulder just in time to see the first wave of Zorath soldiers rounding the corner, their dark figures silhouetted in the dim light of the hallway. "Go, go, go!" Kale shouted as he reached the ship's hatch and slammed it open. The team piled into the ship in a rush. Aria was the last to enter, her eyes never leaving the advancing Zorath soldiers. They were almost there, but not fast enough. With a roar, the engines ignited, and the ship lifted off the ground, the fortress shrinking behind them as they broke free from the moon's surface. The Zorath fired their weapons just as they ascended, but the blasts missed narrowly. The team exhaled in unison, relief flooding through them as they shot into the blackness of space. Not exactly a keen exit, Kale muttered as he wiped his brow, but there was a note of satisfaction in his voice. Arya didn't respond, her thoughts focused entirely on the orb she held in her hands, the first piece of the Starforged now safely in their possession. But the fight was far from over. The Zoroth would not let this go easily. They had learned of the Resistance's movements, and they would send everything they had to stop them. Arya turned to her team, her voice steady as she addressed them. "We've only just begun. The war is far from over, but we've taken the first step towards reclaiming what's ours." The ship sailed through the stars. Ahead of them lay the unknown, the remaining pieces of the Starforged scattered across the galaxy, but now they had the power to fight back and reclaim their place among the stars. The future was uncertain, but humanity would rise again, and they would never be forgotten. The stars stretched before them like an infinite road, but the path was far from simple. The Zoroth were not the only threat that stood in their way. As Arya stared out at the endless black expanse, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Humanity's legacy rested in their hands, and now they had a target on their backs. The first piece of the Starforged was theirs, but the galaxy had many corners that would not be kind to their cause. Where to next? Cal's voice broke the silence, his eyes scanning the map that Arya had projected in front of them, the stars twinkling like distant promises. Arya's gaze shifted to the map, her finger hovering over several points scattered across the galaxy, each one marked with a symbol representing a piece of the Starforged. But the choices were not simple. Each piece lay within Zoroth strongholds or deep within enemy territory. "We go to Erinda," she said after a long pause, her voice unwavering despite the gravity of the decision. "It's one of the last known locations of another piece, and it's not far from Zoroth-controlled space." Kale nodded, but the concern in his eyes was evident. "That's close to their capital. We'll be walking straight into the lion's den." "We'll have to be quick," Arya replied, "but we can't afford to wait any longer. The Zoroth will know what we've taken. They'll be looking for us. We can't keep hiding forever." The ship's engines hummed steadily as the crew set a course for Erinda. The trip would take days, but the tension in the air was palpable. No one spoke much during the journey, each of them lost in their thoughts, preparing for what lay ahead. The risks were higher than ever. The Zoroth had already proven how far they were willing to go to stop humanity's rebirth, and the Resistance had no illusions about the dangers they would face. As they approached Erinda, the planet's surface came into view, a vast world covered in lush jungles and sprawling oceans. But beneath that beauty lay a Zoroth fortress hidden deep within the planet's core, a fortress designed to protect the next piece of the Starforged. The team knew that taking this piece would not be easy. The Zoroth would have set up traps and patrols to keep anyone from reaching it. The ship descended low into the atmosphere, Arya's eyes scanning the terrain below. The dense jungles stretched for miles, the only sign of civilization, the massive fortress camouflaged against the natural landscape. "We'll land a few miles away," Arya said, her tone calm but determined. "We move in fast, get the piece, and get out before the Zoroth even know we're here." The ship landed silently in a clearing a few kilometers from the fortress. The jungle was thick and humid, the air heavy with the scent of plants and the buzzing of unseen creatures. The team disembarked quickly, moving through the underbrush with expert precision, their footsteps light, their movements coordinated. Arya led the way, her mind focused on the mission. The team moved quietly through the jungle, the dense foliage making it hard to see much more than a few feet ahead. The sound of their breathing was the only thing they could hear aside from the rustling of leaves in the wind. They reached the edge of the fortress. After hours of careful navigation, the massive structure loomed before them, half hidden by the jungle. The walls were covered in moss and vines, but beneath that natural camouflage were layers of advanced security systems, sensors hidden in plain sight. The Zoroth had made sure this fortress was impenetrable. "We need to find the entrance," Cal whispered, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any weaknesses. "There's no way through those walls unless we have the key." Arya looked at the wall, noticing the slight gap where the jungle had eroded the outer layers. She stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the surface. As she studied the faint markings etched into the stone, the markings were old symbols, ancient and faded, but to Arya they held meaning. They were a guide, a key to the entrance. "This is it," Arya said softly, as her fingers traced the symbols. "The door is hidden, but we can unlock it from here." With a quick motion, she pressed the symbols in the correct sequence, and the massive stone doors slid open, revealing the dark interior of the fortress. The team moved inside, weapons ready. "We're in," Arya muttered. "Let's move quickly." The journey had taken them deep into enemy territory, but Arya knew there was no turning back now. They had come too far to stop. The corridors of the Zorth fortress were dark and cold, the air thick with the scent of ancient metal and unyielding stone. Arya's eyes flicked over every surface, her mind processing the information quickly. The fortress had been built with the intention of keeping something valuable hidden, and she knew exactly what that was. The next piece of the Starforged lay somewhere within these walls. The team moved in silence, their steps echoing off the cold floors as they navigated the maze of hallways, each turn leading them deeper into the heart of the Zorth stronghold. The walls seemed to close in around them the further they went, but Arya's resolve remained unshaken. They had come this far, they couldn't afford to fail now. They reached a large central chamber, its walls adorned with carvings of ancient Zorth history. The murals depicted their rise to power, their conquests, their destruction of humanity's colonies. But Arya wasn't here to study their past, she was here to find the piece of the Starforged and take it back. "We're close," Kel whispered as he scanned the room, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a hidden alcove at the far end of the chamber. "There's something there." Arya nodded and motioned for the team to follow. They moved toward the alcove, their footsteps barely audible against the stone floor. The closer they got, the more she could feel the power radiating from the wall. It was the same feeling she had experienced when touching the first piece of the Starforged, a connection that seemed to resonate deep within her soul. She stepped forward, her hand resting against the cold stone of the alcove, and as her fingers brushed the surface, the wall shifted with a low hum, revealing a hidden door behind it. "Here it is," Arya said, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. This was the moment they had worked so hard for. The team moved through the door into a small room bathed in a soft glowing light. At its center was a pedestal, and upon that pedestal rested the second piece of the Starforged, its surface shimmering with energy. Arya felt an almost magnetic pull toward it, as if the piece was calling to her, drawing her in. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and took the piece into her hands. As soon as her fingers made contact with the smooth surface, a surge of power shot through her entire body. The energy was overwhelming, but she welcomed it. She had already embraced the Starforged's power, and now she could feel it flowing through her more intensely than before. The room trembled as if reacting to the power in her hands, and for a moment Arya feared the entire fortress would collapse around them, but the sensation quickly passed, leaving only the quiet hum of the Starforged piece in her grip. "We've got what we came for," Kale said, his voice tinged with urgency. "We need to get out of here now before the Zorth find us." Arya nodded, but as she turned to lead the team back, she felt a sudden shift in the air, a presence growing stronger. The Zorth had arrived sooner than expected. "Move," she ordered, her voice sharp. As she gripped the piece tighter in her hands, the team quickly turned and began retracing their steps, but the sounds of Zorth soldiers filled the hallways they were closing in. The sound of heavy boots clanging against the metal floor echoed from behind them. The Zorth had found their way to the fortress, and they weren't about to let them leave so easily. Arya's mind raced as she thought of a way out. The corridors ahead were blocked, and the only exit was the way they had come in. "There's a maintenance tunnel to the left," Kale said, his eyes darting around the room. "It's hidden, but it'll get us out." Arya didn't hesitate. She turned sharply, leading her team into the narrow tunnel hidden behind a set of steel doors. They pushed through the tight space, their bodies squeezed against the walls as they moved quickly, the sound of Zorth soldiers pounding the hallway behind them, getting closer with every passing second. The tunnel twisted and turned, but Arya kept moving forward, determined not to let the Zorth catch them now. They were so close to freedom. The exit was near, just a few more steps, and they would be out of this hellhole. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel, the faint light of the outside world visible through a small hatch. Arya quickly opened it and helped the team climb out into the open air. The night sky stretched above them, filled with the light of distant stars. They were free for now, but the war was far from over. They had the second piece of the star forged. But many more lay ahead, and the Zorith would not stop hunting them. Arya looked at her team, her heart swelling with pride. They had done it together, and they would keep fighting together. No matter what came next, the resistance was growing stronger, and humanity was rising once again.